Good morning, everyone. I'm Maddie from TTG, and this is Ali from Tourism Australia. She's one of the destination trainers there. So, kind of during the COVID-19 lockdown, maybe some agents have been furloughed, or others have more time on their hands once they've kind of figured out their rebookings and kind of covered all that. So we thought this time could be dedicated to training up on destination knowledge, to really prepare for when travel ban is lifted. So this is the first in a series of TTG's destination-focused Facebook Lives, which will be taking place on Wednesdays during the lockdown. This is also the first in a series of 4 Australia-themed masterclasses, which are going to be taking place at 11 a.m. On the remaining 3 Wednesdays of April. So in this one, we're going to be giving an overview of Australia. We're going to start by talking about the current travel situation and how to get there once the travel ban is lifted. We're going to be talking about bushfire recovery and geography of the country, best time to visit, Australia's holiday highlights, and kind of an ideal itinerary for a first-time visitor. If you have any questions during the session, feel free to ask them in the comment section below, and we will do our best to get back to you live. So kind of, Ali, my first question really for you is, what are the current restrictions on travel from the UK to Australia?
Yeah, I just want to say firstly, thank you everyone for signing in and for TTG for having us. So I know it's a really difficult time for the whole travel industry at the moment. And, you know, we're all in this together, and I have no doubt that we'll all bounce back from this. So I just wanted to say that initially, hopefully you can take this time to just kind of dream for a bit, daydream from your living rooms and escape to Australia as we chat about it now. Current situations. So currently only Australian residents can enter Australia, so permanent residents and Australian citizens. And anyone who enters the country needs to do a 14-day mandatory quarantine as well. And there is no indication at the moment of how long these precautionary measures will be in place. So similar to what it's like here in the UK, the situation is evolving day by day, and the circumstances are changing daily. So my best piece of advice would be for any agents who want to stay updated is check out our consumer website, australia.com, and that's updated with all the current situation, and it's directly linked to the Home Affairs website. So that's also updated by the government daily as well as the situation evolves. Yeah.
Cool, okay. And do you think people will be looking to book holidays to Australia again soon?
Yeah, I think that the good thing about the UK market is that it is really resilient when it comes to Australia. So Australia tends to hold a special place in the hearts for a lot of Brits. You know, that comes from the strong ties with family and relatives down under, as well as, you know, those cultural similarities as well, you know, whether it's our sport, you know, we have the same Queen, we speak the same language, well, almost the same language, and, you know, we drive on the left, all those sorts of, I guess, comforting familiarities that, you know, personally, I think people will be looking for when they do look to travel, especially after this period of uncertainty as well. And also, I guess the lead time works in our favour for Australia as well. So people who are looking, you know, if they're inquiring now or in the next couple of months, it's likely that they're going to be booking to travel in, you know, probably about 6 months' time, which hopefully we're on the other side of all of this. So it could be perfect timing.
Yeah. Oh, great. So kind of when the travel ban is lifted, what's kind of going to be the best way to get to Australia?
Yeah, so we predict that airlines will pick up a similar schedule and recommence schedules that we were on before all of this. So we have multiple departures a day to Australia. And yeah, so you're looking at roughly 22 hours to get down to Oz, including transit. We've got a few of our key airlines, Singapore Airlines, Qantas, obviously Emirates, Etihad, Qatar. They all fly down to Oz, multiple departures daily. We also have the direct flight as well. So that's from London Heathrow to Perth. So it's less than 17 hours. I've done that a few times and it's a great flight. So it's really not that bad. It's actually I've had some agents say that their clients have done it in 15 and a half hours. So before you know it, you're down in Australia. There is also some really great stopover options as well. So I guess if anyone's customers are a bit concerned about flying long haul, then there is a few great stopover options, whether it's Singapore, Dubai, Thailand, Indonesia, I can name loads of great options where they can break up the journey and create a holiday within a holiday as well. And there's multiple different gateways into Australia. So there's 8 international gateways in Australia where people can arrive into as well, all around the country. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And kind of what are the options for customers traveling from Ireland? I mean, is it kind of a similar kind of situation in terms of flights?
Yeah, so similar timings. Roughly about 22 hours, including transit. You can get there 1 stop from Dublin, 2 stops from Cork or Shannon. The main airlines out of Ireland, you're looking at Emirates, Etihad, Aer Lingus, Qantas, Qatar, or flying from Ireland as well. So similar to UK, yeah.
Okay, cool. And once kind of the customers get there, land in destination, what kind of landscapes can they expect to be seeing? I mean, is Australia all outback and cities?
I think a lot of people do think that it is just the outback and the cities in Oz, but we do have really varying landscapes. So to put it in perspective, Australia is actually roughly the same size as the continent of Europe. So as you can imagine, the landscapes do differ quite a lot around the country. We do have the Australian outback and the Australian desert, so in the red centre. We've got the Australian bush, which is more like native plants and eucalyptus trees. We've got hinterland, we've got miles and miles of beaches all around the coast. We've got rainforests, so we've got the oldest living rainforest as well. We've got reefs, and we've got vineyards as well. So yeah, lots of different landscapes.
Wow, loads of variety. And I know Australia has had some problems with bushfires kind of recently. Are there any areas that are still off limits, or how quickly is everything bouncing back?
Yeah, so bushfires, it might seem like a lifetime ago for a lot of people, but if you do think back kind of to the start of the year, Australia did have a really tough start with the unprecedented bushfire season. It was kind of thrust into the spotlight, and with that, I guess it came a lot of misinformation, particularly over here in the UK, and the consumer perception of Australia did seem like a lot of people thought that the whole of Australia was on fire, when in reality it was actually less than 2% of the country actually burned. So there was a lot of Australia that was unaffected by unaffected by bushfires. Don't get me wrong though, the areas that were affected were dramatically impacted, but those areas had already recovered and were bouncing back, and they were already welcoming visitors prior to all of this taking place. So yeah, it's a bit of a double blow for a lot of those regions, because those regional communities do rely so heavily on tourism. But yeah, they'll be welcoming everyone with open arms as soon as the borders reopen.
Yeah. And what about kind of the wildlife that was affected by the bushfires? Is Australia doing anything to kind of repatriate almost the wildlife?
Yeah, actually, so the Australian bush is actually really resilient, and a lot of the native flora and fauna in Australia actually relies on bushfires to regenerate, and it's quite an amazing thing to see. You kind of just to see how nature kind of regenerates and restores itself. It's quite it's quite amazing. Actually, earlier this week we released the first lot of koalas back into the wild. So the first rescued koalas from the bushfires by the Port Macquarie Koala Hospital. They released 14 this week back to their homes. So that was they were put back into the trees that they were taken off of and rescued from. And that's because that area had already fully regenerated, within the last 3 months. So it's quite quick, and it's so great to see. And over the next 2 weeks, they're releasing, I think it's another 14 or so koalas back into the wild, back into those fire affected regions that have now recovered. So yeah, really nice to see.
Oh, sweet. Glad they can go home.
Yeah.
So kind of what are Australia's seasons? Do they have kind of summer and winter the same as us?
Yeah, and I was just going to bring up, put a little map on my background so you can see. Because I don't know, it might be just a bit easier to kind of see on the right here. So Australia actually has 2 climate zones. So above the Tropic of Capricorn, which is the line that goes through almost the center of Australia, we have a tropical climate. So there's only really 2 seasons in the tropics, and that's like a tropical summer, or also known as the wet season, and a dry season as well. So you're looking at the dry season to be from May to October, wet season from November to April. And that's areas such as North Queensland, the top end in Northern Territory, and Broome in Western Australia. And then below that Tropic of Capricorn, we've got 4 seasons. Obviously the other way around to here. So when it's winter in the Northern Hemisphere, it's summer in Australia. So, we have a really hot Christmas. And when it's summer here, it's winter in Australia. Yeah, but it is super mild winter. So you're looking at average, like for instance, Sydney and Melbourne, averages of about 26 degrees in the middle of the day in winter. So as you can imagine, it's mild and mostly sunny. So yeah.
And kind of based on that, so when is the best time to visit Australia, as a holiday maker?
Yeah, I think the best thing you can do is probably ask your clients what exactly their interests are, why they want to visit Australia, because it might be on their list that they really want to dive the Great Barrier Reef, visit, watch the sunset on the west coast in Broome, or the top end Northern Territory. So like I mentioned earlier, probably the best time to visit those periods would be in the dry season. But in saying that, the wet season means that it's really lush and green, and the waterfalls are all flowing as well. Also, our animals can be quite seasonal. So again, if they want to watch the whales migrating up and down the east and the south, east and the west coast, that's in the Australian winter time. We've got turtles hatching in February and March, or perhaps the draw card might be sports as well. So we've got the Ashes next year. So that's kind of November time. Or we've got some really great events as well. So I think in terms of the climate, there's no bad time to visit. It's always hot somewhere in Australia, no matter what time of year it is. I think it's just taking into account what your clients want to see and do, and perhaps picking the best season for those regions. Yeah.
Okay, great. And you mentioned some experiences in there. I mean, are they kind of Australia's bucket list experiences, or are there others to add to that?
Yeah, I think I tend to not use the word bucket list as much, because I feel like it refers to once in a lifetime experiences, whereas one of the biggest draw cards for Australia is that Aussie laid back lifestyle. And so some of our, classic experience might be, ordering a flat white in the laneways in Melbourne, or, going down to Bondi Beach and having a barbecue, or checking out the lifeguards, or, like kind of everyday things that are quite Aussie that is on everybody's list to do when they go down there. Yeah. But we've also got our amazing experience, like icons as well. So, like everyone thinks of, Sydney Opera House, Sydney Harbour Bridge. We've got Uluru, which is the spiritual heart of Australia, so Ayers Rock. And then there's things like obviously the Great Barrier Reef, and the Daintree Rainforest, or, the Great Ocean Road. Like there is some really classic icons as well that are definitely obviously worth trying to fit in there if you're going out there.
Yeah. Okay. And so we're with so many experiences, spread over such a large country. And where would you recommend an agent starts if they're looking at putting together an itinerary for their client?
Yeah, again, I think a good one is taking into account what their interests are, because like I've mentioned, there is lots to see and do. We do have a really high repeat visitation rate, which is like, I take that to mean that people come down and they love it so much that they just come back time and time again, because there's so much to explore. So they don't need to do everything in their first trip. a good place to start, again, like, so if they love their wildlife, you know, thinking about, you know, where it is, the best places, you know, the wildlife journeys where they can see wildlife in the wild. If they love their food, and like if they're a bit of foodies, you know, we've got some incredible wine regions, you know, 65 wine regions across the country. Again, arts and culture, you know, kind of just thinking about what your clients are going out there to see. Another great place to start, though, would be on the Aussie Specialist Program, which is our online training platform. We've actually got a load of recommended itineraries. So if you've literally got no idea, and you know, you haven't sold Australia before, or your clients aren't even sure, like they might not, you know, have much destination knowledge at all. So if you jump on the Aussie Specialist Program, you can actually filter our recommended itineraries down by experiences, and by duration, and by regions as well. So you can actually use that as a base to kind of piece together, you know, your ultimate one, you know, take parts of some of them. You can even save them as PDFs and send them out to your customers to give them an idea. That's a pretty good starting point to kind of start to develop your own itineraries. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like a really good resource. So is in that kind of bank of itinerary options, is there one for a first timer that kind of, you know, that ticks off kind of, you know, the things that people would want to see if they're visiting Australia for the first time?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned a few of our like classic Australian icons just before. So I think a good first timer itinerary is the Sydney Rock and Reef, it's often referred to, and those who have sold Australia before probably have come across it a few times. It's basically includes a variety of our you know, really well-known icons in very varying landscapes as well. I'm gonna give you a little taste of what I mean by different landscapes are. So for instance, the Sydney element of the Sydney Rock and Reef, you would be flying into Sydney, which is one of our largest gateways, and experiencing, you know, spending a week or so in this New South Wales, and perhaps doing day trips to, you know, the classic, you know, Bondi Beach, Hunter Valley, or, you know, Sydney Harbour, and really getting a feel for that kind of metropolitan, the event scene, as well as our inner city beaches as well. And then moving on to one of those other classic icons, which is of course Uluru, or also known as Ayers Rock, which is in the centre of Australia, so the red centre. And as you can see, as the colours change, a completely different landscape. And this is a really special experience. It is the spiritual heart of Australia, so this is where they can really get to know that Aboriginal culture, learn more about the history of Australia, as well as do some incredible stargazing with like zero light pollution, and really just experience the Aussie outback. And then moving up to North Queensland. So again, there we go. You can see that, you know, these are all the beautiful greens and blues of the Great Barrier Reef and the Daintree Rainforest. And again, you can spend, you know, a week or so up here, really getting to know these two World Heritage listed sites in North Queensland. So that's a great first timer that really takes in a lot of different regions of Australia, and yeah, a lot of different landscapes as well.
Cool. And kind of how long would an itinerary like that take? I mean, is that, what's the ideal amount of time for an Australian?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest barriers that you'll come across as travel agents is the factor of time. So with Australia being a long haul destination, consumers often think that they need a huge chunk of time to visit Australia. They, you know, you often get people thinking, you know, one day I'll do it. I need at least a month to explore. But in reality, you can actually do a pretty decent Australian holiday within 2 weeks. I just put this one on my screen because you can kind of see, like, get an idea of an itinerary like the one I just showed you, can easily be done within 2 weeks. And that would be an ideal starting point. Obviously, if they've got longer, I mean, that's unreal. They, you know, you can easily spend longer time down there, but often people don't have that long. 14 days on the ground. If you leave on a Friday evening, you can only have to take 10 days off work. So it fits into that kind of annual leave side of things as well. But yeah, I think I'd say at least 2 weeks, and no more than 3 regions. So like I said before, not trying to squeeze everything in because you don't want them to spend the whole time traveling. So yeah, no more than 3 regions within those 2 weeks. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And for agents that have watched this Facebook Live and are keen to find out more about Australia and selling Australia, what's kind of the best place to go for more information?
Yeah, best place is, like I mentioned before, the Aussie Specialist Program. Jump on there. We're actually doing a bit of an incentive at the moment to help get you guys through isolation. So we've got 20 or so Aussie chocolate hampers. So, you know, Tim Tams and Cherry Ripes and Caramello Koalas, if you guys know what any of them are. But we've got a few of those to give away to anyone. So if you sign up, if you've got time over the next couple of months, then sign up to it, and we're going to send a few of those out to newly qualified travel agents. So it's really good for resources like, you know, recommended itineraries, interactive maps. We do a load of webinars with our state and territory partners, and you'll hear from some of them in the coming weeks in these Facebook Lives. So yeah, we've got a few webinars with them as well on the Aussie Specialist Program. And yeah, so that would be the first place to start. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so yeah, you mentioned our next Facebook Lives there. So we're doing another one next Wednesday at 11 a.m. I believe that's going to be focusing on Sydney and Melbourne. Is it, Ali?
Yeah, so next week we've got Destination New South Wales and Visit Victoria coming on. So they're going to delve deeper into those regions, you know, of Melbourne, Victoria, and Sydney, New South Wales. So you guys can have, you know, more product specific and more in detail about those regions to start things off before the next ones come on. Yeah.
Cool, great. So yeah, if you have any questions about what we've talked about today, or any questions ahead of next week's session, just type them in the comment section below, or you can even email them to me. I'm mbarber@ttgmedia.com. And yeah, we'll do our best to get back to you. Thanks very much for watching. Bye guys.
Oh, I just wanted to say, guys, sorry, before you sign off, this little video here I've got in my background, I've asked TTG to post it in the comments there. So have a click on there. It's just a nice little a message from Australia, just kind of telling everybody that when the time is right, that our arms are open and welcoming everyone to come back down when we're able to. So yeah, cool. Have a watch for that one.
All right, lovely. I'll see you guys soon.
Cool. Thanks, everybody.